So, welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. My guest today is Daniel Feiman, founder and managing director of Build It Backwards, a global management consulting and leadership development firm founded in 1996 with deep expertise in strategy, leadership, finance, succession planning, and organizational transformation. And Daniel has over 3 decades of experience in consulting, teaching, writing, and helping leaders turn roadblocks into roadmaps to grow and scale their organizations. So, Daniel, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks very much, Esteban. I'm looking forward to this.
Great. So, just to start this episode, I would like to ask you a question about your journey. And I know your consulting journey is long and multifaceted, from commercial banking to founding your current firm, which is Build It Backwards. In the 90s, you built it. And so I was wondering what early experiences or insights led you to start your firm, and how has that foundational vision shaped the way you approach your practice today?
Well, it's a very interesting journey, and thanks very much for asking it that way. I was a commercial banker for almost 20 years before I got frustrated with banking and decided there was a better way to really meet my clients' needs. As a commercial banker, was bound by not only the bank's policies, but
Mhm.
also the state regulations, the federal regulations, the Department of Corporations, etc. And it got very frustrating. So I looked around, thought about my options, and at one point said, I just got to be able to meet my clients' needs better. So I took the leap, and it was a little scary because I'd never actually owned my own firm before. I'd always worked for an
Yeah.
organization. So I started it so I would be in a position to be able to help my clients get the services, get the results that they really wanted, they needed, and that they deserved. And so our basic vision always has been not only to look this way, but do what's right for the client. That's our bottom line. That's our core foundation.
Great. And I know one of your mission is also turning roadblocks into roadmaps, and you say that quite often. And I was wondering, how did that framework emerge, and how does it affect really the way you articulate value early with a client conversation?
Well, the idea of turning roadblocks into roadmaps really came from observing how other consultants and other leaders worked on problems. And what I
Mhm.
found was that so often they would face roadblocks, they would face problems, challenges, potholes, as some call them, and they didn't seem to be able to resolve them easily. So I got in the habit of saying, look, my only way of being successful in this new firm is to look at a client's problem and find a way to overcome it. It reminded me of a course I took in undergraduate school, which used the example of a rock in a stream. And if the water tries to go through the rock, it'll never get there. If the water goes around the rock, you keep going. So I said, okay, let's assume for every problem there is a solution.
Mhm.
So what I start doing when I first am referred to a client, even before they're a client, when they're a prospect, is I research the client, both the C suite and the firm itself. When I meet with them, whether it's over Zoom or in person, I ask questions. I practice active listening to see what
Yeah.
they really are saying, not just the words they're using. Then I create a success roadmap with them and for them with positive options. So, a very quick example,
Yeah.
I was referred to a law firm with a 70-year-old partner, founder who owned the firm. He wanted to transition out to retire and sell it
Mhm.
to junior non-equity partner. They've run into some problems where they're so far apart on certain issues that it may or may not go forward. My
Mm.
client got very frustrated and he starts to think, oh my goodness, what if I can't sell him the firm? Do I just close
Yeah.
it? So, based on my experience with other law firms, based on some conversations, I was able to craft 4 different options for him, all of which will get him what he wants under different situations. So, that's what we mean by turning roadblocks into roadmaps, finding one or more positive solutions regardless of the challenge.
Yeah. Finding solutions to every problem, basically. And I think that's a way to approach it. And with your experience and you've been doing this for a long time, I know you also offer financial modeling and leadership development as part as a consulting and training work. And I was wondering if you could share another a specific example of a client engagement where, integrating strategic planning with financial modeling and materially shifted their results. Can you share some concrete results in terms of growth or decision making clarity?
So the challenge is trying to pick one that would be the most universal example, I guess.
Mhm.
So I worked with a good sized manufacturing firm. They're about 100 million in revenue. And our clients are generally up to about that size. So a good portion of what we call the middle or the lower end of the market. They wanted to put together their 10-year plan, their 10-year strategic plan leading up to whatever might come next, which
Okay.
is maybe to sell the firm, maybe to retire, who knows. So we facilitated with our model, creating their strategic plan with them. We don't just come in and write a plan. It's actually we facilitate the strategic planning process.
Yeah.
And as part of that, part of the future, the growth, we said, look, you've got 8 different product lines. How profitable or not are each of them? Which is your most profitable? Which is your least profitable? They didn't know. No one had ever asked them that question. They had never thought to break down their product lines to see which ones were most profitable or least. So we asked permission to gather up some financial and operating information. We built a model to actually demonstrate how profitable each of the product lines were. And it turned out that 3 of their product lines were not profitable, regardless of what they did. We went historically, we went back 5 years. 2 of the 3 had never been profitable. So we said, all right, for your growth, you can grow the top line. Do you also want to grow the bottom line? If so, what do you want to do with these 3 product lines? Do you want to continue them in spite of losing money? Do you want to continue them with the idea of finding ways to make them profitable in the next 1 or 2 years? Or do you want to cease producing these product lines, which might reduce, at least in the short run, your revenue, but increase your profits?
Yeah.
What they decided to do literally was kill one of the product lines. We trained the product managers of the other 2 lines P&L responsibility. We taught them how to understand their income statements
Mhm.
and what they could do to impact them. And over the next 18 to 24 months, both of them were able to at least get to break even. One actually turned a steady profit, the other was a break even. So we were able to meld the idea of financial modeling as a tool to implement the strategic plan and give the client a much more sustainable positive result.
Yeah. And from what you're saying, you also offer when there is a problem, you offer various solutions, and each one of those solutions, it's a win, but it's different. It's like it's differently. It's gonna attack different aspects of maybe of the problem. Is that
Absolutely. The idea is, what does the client need? What does the client want? What are the variables we're working with? How can we help the client recognize as many positive options for their future as possible and choose what's best for them? It's not our choice, it's the client's choice.
yeah.
My job is to share with them, to show them all of the possible positive outcomes.
Yeah, because there is no universal answer to a problem. It, like you mentioned, it depends what he wants. Because if he wants to sell a business, it's completely different. That if he wants to scale it, no.
Very true. And there are many different ways to sell a business. There's many different ways to scale up the business. There's many
Exactly.
different ways to evolve a business. Part of it is who's in charge and what
Yeah.
decisions do they want to make. Part of it is also what's their marketplace? What is their life cycle? I mean, there's, again, many different variables that go into this to make each client engagement, each situation unique.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is unique. Everybody is unique. Every business, even in a single industry, it's always different problems. And when in your strategic planning and implementation work, what is there some signals or metrics that you're coaching your clients to track that also, though, are are good as indicators or positioning in the market so that maybe after you do the implementation work, they can continue that work without you being fully present in every single step.
Yeah, and that's a very important question for every organization to ask. What
Mhm.
can we measure that tells us if we're doing the right job, if we're getting to where we want to go?
Yeah.
So, most of us are familiar with the term leading indicators and lagging indicators. Lagging indicators, like our financial statements, tell us what has happened, and some of that is important. There are leading indicators that tell us what should happen, what the trends are. So the simplest ones that we usually start off with clients, and then we get more granular, more specific as we look at the specific client, the industry itself, and the company, is we'll start with the customer, always looking externally. So what is the marketplace? What is your marketing budget as a percentage of your overall revenue or your profit? What's your
Mhm.
marketing ROI for every dollar you spend on marketing? What
Yeah.
can you attribute to revenue? What's your market share? And is it growing, stable, or declining? What's the product or service life cycle? Because we all know that every product, every service goes through being initially created and rapid growth, slow growth, maturity, decline, extinction. We have to recognize where our products and services are in the marketplace,
Mhm.
and if it's going approaching maturity or in decline, there are decisions we have to make. And then, of course, a very popular one is the NPS, or the Net Promoter Score. How are our customers looking at us? And do they prefer us or a competitor? Why do they prefer us versus a competitor? Where are we meeting their needs? That's just on the customer side. From an
Yeah.
operational standpoint, always be assessing your suppliers, your vendors, your competition. What's going on with them? How do you
Mhm.
qualify your suppliers? Whether, again, it's a product business or a service business.
Yeah.
Where are your competition? Where is your competition satisfying the marketplace, and where are they not? And are you practicing continuous process improvement? Are you
Mm.
always making your systems better than they were before? So you can measure CPI, and there's a global 5 level standard. You can establish standards for your suppliers. You can measure your competition. So we've
Yeah.
covered customer, we've covered operations. What this results in, and this is what most organizations focus on, although it's not the most important, is financially. What's our top line over time? Is revenue growing or static or declining, and why? What's our
Yeah.
bottom line, both for the entire organization and different product lines or different regional offices, etc.? What are our margins? All of these things from a customer standpoint, an operating standpoint, a financial standpoint, these all can be measured long after we're finished working with the client, and they can establish their own goals and determine where they're on track and want to keep it going, where they're
Mhm.
falling behind and why.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are all you mentioned a lot of questions that business owners and executives should ask themselves and because are so important in a business. But what we see is that a lot of business and successful businesses don't have any answer or not a lot of answers to those questions. Yeah.
And yet they're so fundamental to every organization's success. It surprises me, but I completely agree.
Yeah, it is surprising. And you know, talking about transformation and staying knowing what's going on. How have you seen digital transformation, which is another topic, social content, analytics, AI, which is a hot topic right now. How have you seen that influence how you advise firms both to position themselves and to acquire clients or in their processes, and also how was it in your opinion? Because you've been for a long time in business. How was it different than 10 years ago, let's say?
Well, let's see. We're in our 29th year. In June, we'll hit 30 years of this firm.
Yeah.
I've seen some things go unchanged in all that time. And obviously, many other things have changed dramatically. AI didn't exist a few years ago. When I
Hmm.
started training, we used the old fashioned slides or transparencies before we moved to PowerPoint. A
Yeah.
lot of things do change over time. What I have seen is there's an old expression that I think is 100% accurate. When it comes to business, evolve or die. And I think Eckhart Tolle was the first one to have said that. The fundamentals of business haven't changed. The tools have changed. Social media is a major part of every organization, or should be. Can you think of an organization that doesn't have a website, even if it's just a landing page?
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of that. AI is a tool, it's not the answer. I've got a client that spends about 4 hours a day researching and writing with the assistance of AI, but he's smart enough to know that he has to edit everything that comes out of AI.
Yeah, of course.
Same thing with content. It's so easy to create content today. You have to be careful, though, that your content has unique value. To just restate or just repost or just regurgitate something that someone else created isn't going to be perceived in the marketplace as much value. And if you want to use it to stabilize your business, to grow your business, to acquire clients, you want to bring out value. So, something that we have learned and leveraged ourselves and use with clients on an ongoing basis is client acquisition remains a challenge of four elements: recognition, differentiation, conversation, and value.
Yeah.
Does a prospective client recognize you as one of a number of options to meet their needs? That's number
Hmm.
one. So recognition is critical. So in your content, in your website, in your marketing material, in your conversation, you have to stand out. That's number one,
Yeah.
recognition. Differentiation is number two. What makes you different and better than the other alternatives? So your unique selling proposition, your core competencies, your core values, this has to be communicated and perceived appropriately by your
Yeah.
prospective audience. It's number
Yeah.
two. Number three is having a conversation with prospective clients and referral sources. There's nothing that can replace having a one-on-one conversation about, Esteban, what do you need? What are your challenges? What keeps you up at night? And
Yeah.
not just reading a script, being sincerely caring. And the fourth piece of client acquisition is provide value. If you can be recognized in the marketplace, clearly differentiate yourself from the competition, be open to honest conversation, and provide real value, you'll always be able to acquire good quality.
That is true. And I would like to add on what you cited, authenticity. And I think you will agree with me on that. In a world where a lot of things now, especially with AI and content creation, people see a lot of fake stuff of the stuff that is not trustworthy. So I think that authenticity is coming back strong, and the people who are authentic in their content and not try to look always perfect, but that kind of little imperfection and not trying to be the perfect image always. I think it's
Mhm.
also good for businesses and in the area that we're living right now.
I would completely agree with you. And that's an important term. And I think more people use the term authenticity than actually practice it. And that's unfortunate
Mhm.
because,
Mhm.
as you mentioned, clients, prospects can see through insincerity.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That is true. And I know you when you teach leadership development, strategic planning, is there a story or example that you share most often, about a firm that really went backwards and really like pivoted when you approached them completely in within their business?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this, and what we actually do, and this is something we have to explain to clients on a fairly regular basis. Yes, we do build it backwards, which is why the firm is named that. But in
Yeah.
order to build it backwards, we actually have to go forward first. So we
Mhm.
explain to clients, let's look at your ideal horizon. Let's look at your perfect outcome, whatever it is. Whether you're
Yeah.
trying to grow your business, whether you're trying to or diversify or sell your business, retire, whatever you're trying to do. What is the perfect outcome? So let's look at that. Let's kind of put a pin in that and say, okay, in 5 years, in 20 years, in 10 years, I want to be X. Great. So we write that down. From that future point, we reverse engineer, we build it backwards to today to create what we call their success roadmap. Why
Mhm.
do we? Because that's very important to understanding the process.
Yeah.
Because think of when you went on vacation at some point, you were driving somewhere. There were things that you didn't anticipate. Some parts of the journey might have taken longer or didn't have the facilities that you wanted. But when you're returning home from your destination, you are very comfortable. You can see all of those things before they happen.
Yeah.
That's why we actually build it back. And probably the example that I quote the most is a husband and wife owned a commercial landscape company that we were referred to by their investment banker a number of years ago. They had done a great job. They literally started with a wheelbarrow and a pickup truck and the two of them. They built it up to a very substantial business, multi-million dollar business. But it was in shambles because they had no plan. They had no
Mm.
training. They had no leadership. It was just the two of them. So we were engaged to come in. We did an assessment of the organization. We sat down and walked them through building a 10-year strategic plan. Then, because they wanted to retire sooner than that, a succession plan. Then, since they really didn't have anybody, including themselves, that had any formal training and leadership, and their leadership team was not performing as well as they could, we took the team through leadership development and individual leadership coaching. And then we standardized and documented and improved all their processes. So think of this: strategic planning, succession planning, leadership
Mhm.
development, continuous process improvement. We worked with that firm for 18 months. It was
Mm.
dramatically different when we finished the engagement than when we
I
started.
imagine.
Brought brought back in their investment banker, who then put the firm on the market. They got two offers greater than their asking price. But then something unusual happened. We had also introduced them to a tax specialist, not just their accountant, but someone who really specialized in finding ways, legitimate, appropriate ways to minimize your taxes. And what they found was after all the taxes they would pay, after all the bonuses they had promised to send to their senior leaders, they weren't going to walk away with much more than they were on an annual basis. So we restructured it from an external sale
Mhm.
to a multi-year internal sale to their key people. They ended up getting more money over the next 5 years than they would have from an external sale.
Yeah,
Because we built it backwards from their ideal outcome back to today, listened to what they really wanted, not just what they said, and created something that would give them the best possible result.
that's a very interesting case. Thank you for sharing it with me and with the audience. It's very impressive. That's the great. That's a lot. That's like a whole puzzle because, like you mentioned, you were on the road and then something happened and you had to change and adapt. So I think that's also why the consulting space in the consulting industry is fun and there's always new things, new challenges to unlock within the clients.
Absolutely.
And so maybe to close the show, I wanted to ask you a last question. And the question would be, what's next for Build It Backwards? Or are you focusing on for the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, let's see. I'm currently writing my fifth book. This is a leadership effectiveness system. We've got 15 different leadership topics that we have both a self assessment for each of these in the book, then an
Mhm.
anecdotal story of how this particular leadership attribute was really used in a positive way in a client situation, and then exactly how to improve and learn these skills. So that's one of the things we're doing. What we're also doing, we're expanding our collaborations with other professionals to bring greater client satisfaction and greater client value. So I always believe that most clients really could benefit from many things that's beyond what we do. So we're acting as their business concierge. What do you need that we can make an introduction to? And then the
Mm.
third thing that we're focusing on is expanding our level one professional relationship groups, which is something that I started a number of years ago. It's not a networking group, it's truly a professional relationship group. But that's where the vast majority of my business, my practice has come from over the years. And that's, I guess, why we're still here after 30 years.
That's great. You have like a whole ecosystem, and that's amazing. Well, thank you very much for sharing all those insights with me, with the audience. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I wish you all the best for the continuation.
Thanks. And the same to you, Esteban.
Thanks.